Hello, and welcome to Muse to Sleep. Tonight, we're stepping into the hidden, often revolting realities of medieval castle life. Stories rarely told in the fairy tales. If you find yourself drifting off during this journey, that's exactly what it's here for. And if you enjoy these calm explorations of history's darker corners, feel free to tap the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment below and share what life is like compared to these stories. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, settle in under your blankets, dim the lights, take a deep breath, and let's begin tonight's journey together. Imagine waking up before dawn in a medieval castle. Your bed is nothing more than a wooden frame stuffed with straw, crawling with lice and fleas that bite at your skin through the thin linen sheets. You shiver in the damp chill of stone walls, the air thick with the sour scent of unwashed bodies, smoke, and rotting rushes underfoot. As you sit up, your head bumps the low canopy beams darkened with soot. You slip your feet into cold leather shoes, feeling grit and straw dust between your toes. You've slept in the same clothes for weeks. The thick wool tunic is stiff with sweat and stained with food drips from days before. Your mouth feels dry and foul. There is no toothpaste here, just a rag dipped in stale wine to rub across your teeth, scraping away a fraction of the decay. The rest remains, breeding infections and the constant ache of exposed nerves. Somewhere in the corner, a chamber pot sits half full, its sharp ammonia scent mingling with the sour human odor in the room. Soon, a servant will come to empty it out of a narrow window, where it splashes onto the courtyard stones below, coating them in streaks of filth. You hear scratching in the rushes on the floor. Rats scurry, sniffing for crumbs dropped the night before. You see them dart under the low table, tails flicking, eyes glittering in the dim candlelight. You've grown used to them. Everyone has. This is your life in a medieval castle. Heavy stone walls protect you from invaders, but they trap smells, disease, and darkness within. Outside your narrow window, dawn breaks grey and cold over the castle courtyard. Guards change shifts on the wall walk. A servant girl carries buckets of water up the worn stone steps, the sloshing liquid dark with silt. Drinking water comes from wells often fouled by latrine runoff. Ale is safer, though it too carries its own sour taste of weak fermentation. You rise, joints aching from the hard straw mattress. As you cross the room, your feet crush herbs strewn in the rushes to mask the rot. The sweet scent of lavender and rosemary mingles with the smell of mildew, waste, and decay. A fleeting comfort in a world where filth is as much a part of life as bread and salt. This is castle life. Romantic in paintings, unbearable in reality. Imagine waking in your stone chamber before dawn. Your breath drifts in small white clouds in the frigid air. The smell hits you, stale, acrid, human. You look beside your narrow straw mattress and see it there, as always. The chamber pot, a simple ceramic bowl, rim chipped from years of clumsy handling. Its contents, well, they've been fermenting all night. You hold your breath as you shuffle across the cold flagstone floor, careful not to kick it over. Now, imagine you're not the noble in this room, but the servant tasked with emptying it. At first light, you and the other maids gather, balancing dozens of pots on wooden trays. Some slosh over with each step. You hurry down dark spiral staircases, slipping on the worn stone steps. The stench coats your nose and clings to your dress no matter how many rosemary sprigs you tuck into your apron. If you've ever gagged taking out your kitchen trash after seafood night, imagine that smell multiplied by 50, with no disinfectants, no gloves, no hot water to wash it away. But not everyone used a pot. Many castles had garderobes, small stone closets built into the outer walls. You'd pull open a splintering wooden door, sit on a cold stone seat, and your waist would drop straight down the chute to the ground below. On a windy winter night, an icy gust might rush up and freeze your thighs as you tried to finish your business quickly. Some chutes emptied straight into the moat. Yes, the same moat that was meant to deter invaders. It became a churning soup of mud, rainwater, food scraps, and human waste. In summer, the smell rose like a curse over the entire castle courtyard. Imagine for a moment walking across the drawbridge, past banners flapping proudly overhead, and being struck with that foul scent, so strong it coated your tongue. You might have thought the castle was rotting from within, and in a way, it was. Life in medieval castles wasn't just uncomfortable. It was humiliating, filthy, and relentless in its small degradations. Something as simple as relieving yourself reminded you daily that your comfort, dignity, and cleanliness were always one bad meal or one overflowing pot away from misery. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine the chamber pot by your bed. Imagine the servant girl's trembling hands as she carries it away before dawn, praying each step that it won't spill onto her feet. And imagine knowing this was only the beginning of your day. Close your eyes and listen to the walls around you. They're alive. Scratch, scratch, scratch. That sound isn't the wind rattling loose shutters. It's tiny claws skittering behind the stone. In medieval castles, vermin weren't rare visitors. They were permanent residents. Rats thrived here. They crept along damp corridors, their grey fur slick with kitchen grease and sewage. By candlelight, you'd see their eyes glinting like black pearls as they darted across the floor. Imagine you're a servant waking in the dark. You reach for your shoes beside your straw mattress and feel something warm and wriggling inside. A rat has curled up there seeking your body heat. Or worse, it has chewed a hole straight through the leather during the night, leaving your only shoes ruined. Mice nested everywhere, between rushes on the floor, under the straw stuffed into your mattress, even in the reeds laid to soak up spills and human waste. You might hear their squeaks under your pillow as you try to sleep. But the worst were the fleas. They weren't just a nuisance, they were killers. In the 14th century, these tiny insects carried a horror that swept through castles and villages alike: the Black Death. One bite could deliver a fever that burned your skin from the inside out, blackening fingers, toes, and finally lungs until you gasped for breath that would not come. Even without plague, fleas tormented everyone. They hid in your linen shift and feasted along your waist and thighs. Lice gnawed at your scalp, laying eggs in the seams of your coif until scratching your head drew lines of blood. Imagine the shame. The castle lord's daughter, hair combed with ivory and scented with rosewater, still scratching furiously at her hairline during dinner. Nobility meant nothing to a louse. And then there were the bedbugs. At night, you'd feel their sharp proboscis pierce your skin as they fed unnoticed. Come morning, your arms and legs would be dotted with itchy red welts. you'd slap at your sheets in frustration, only to see them scurry back into the seams of your mattress where no amount of scrubbing could reach them. People tried remedies, spreading lavender stalks or mint, rubbing garlic on bed legs, burning juniper in rooms to fumigate the air, but nothing truly worked. The vermin always came back, because in the world of castles, humans weren't the only ones who called these stone walls home. They say the castle walls had ears, but they also had teeth, tiny, relentless teeth that gnawed at grain stores, gnawed at blankets, gnawed at sanity itself. As you drift towards sleep tonight, listen carefully to the silence around you. Imagine hearing it broken by a squeak from beneath your bed, or a faint skitter behind your pillow, or the brush of something warm and furred across your ankle in the darkness. Because in the castle, you were never truly alone. You're thirsty. The sun has baked the stone courtyard all afternoon, and sweat runs down your back beneath your wool tunic. You dream of cool, clear water to soothe your cracked lips. But in the castle, clear water is a death wish. The moat surrounding your home isn't just a defensive barrier, it's a cesspit. Every waste bucket dumped from the guardrobe above lands there. Rotting food scraps, human waste, dead rats. Over time, the water turns black and oily, crawling with green scum and reeking so foul it makes the air itself taste rotten. The well inside the castle walls is only slightly better. Groundwater seeps in from the moat, carrying bacteria invisible to medieval eyes. People who drank straight from the well often paid for it with stomach cramps, fever, and vomiting. Dysentery and cholera spread quietly, thinning the population without mercy. So what did people drink? Even children drank it. Babies were weaned onto thin, weak ale called small beer, because water was simply too dangerous. Imagine your toddler's milk cup filled with foamy, bitter ale each morning. For the workers and soldiers, the ale was stronger, brewed thick with barley, hops, and yeast. It was left unfiltered, cloudy with grains and floating clumps. Sometimes it turned sour if stored too long. Sometimes insects drowned in the barrel, their tiny corpses scooped out before the drink was ladled into mugs. But ale kept people alive. The brewing process boiled out many pathogens, making it safer than water, and the alcohol preserved it longer. A person could survive on ale for weeks if they had no clean water source, but it came at a price. Imagine trying to build battlements or scrub rushes from the Great Hall while mildly drunk every single day. Balance unsteady, mind foggy, temper shortened. Fights broke out easily. Mistakes happened often. Worse, ale couldn't quench thirst like water could. The more you drank, the more dehydrated you became, your tongue thickening in your mouth like old leather. Nobles sometimes drank wine, imported from France or Italy, but it arrived in barrels that sat for months on ships and wagons. By the time it reached the castle cellar, it was sour and vinegary, a far cry from the sweet reds we know today. So each morning, when your lips cracked with thirst, you reached for ale. Each night, when you felt the dizziness of dehydration and alcohol mix in your veins, you prayed for the strength to rise again at dawn, because there was no other choice. In the world of stone walls and festering moats, clear water was an impossible luxury, and the very thing you needed to survive slowly poisoned you from within. When darkness falls inside a medieval castle, it is total. Candles flicker along the stone corridors, their wax pooling into cracked metal holders. Rushlights burn low, casting long, distorted shadows against the damp walls. And in those shadows, the rats emerge. You hear them first, the soft scratching of claws on flagstone floors, the creak of wood beams as they scurry overhead in the rafters. Rats thrive here, in a world where scraps fall to the ground after every meal, and where straw bedding and wall hangings provide hidden pathways for their small, quick bodies. At night, lying on your straw pallet or thin wool blanket spread across the cold floor, you feel them brush against your arm. You tighten the covers, praying they won't crawl onto your chest or nibble your hair as you sleep. Rats are more than a nuisance. They carry fleas that bite and itch until your skin bleeds. Worse still, they carry diseases no one in your world understands. The castle's dense living quarters become a breeding ground for illness. Outbreaks of plague, typhus, and fevers that sweep through the household sparing no rank. But rats are not feared like wolves or invaders. They are simply accepted, another discomfort in a life filled with discomfort. In the kitchens, they climb into grain barrels, chewing through sacks and leaving droppings among the flour. Servants sift the grain in the morning, picking out the black specks before baking bread for the Lord's table. The bread still carries a faint musky scent, but there is no choice. Food is too precious to waste. Sometimes, in the dead of night, you hear a scream from the far end of the hall. A rat has bitten someone's toe or chewed a wound raw in their sleep. The screams subside into sobbing. Then silence returns, broken only by the squeaks and scratches of creatures thriving in your darkness. Yet you rise each morning, brush away the droppings from your tunic, and carry on with your duties, because there is no other life beyond these walls, and in the kingdom of stone and shadows, the rats rule the night just as surely as the lords rule the day. Cats were prized in castles to control these swarming shadows. But even the fiercest mouser cannot keep pace with a population that thrives in the damp walls and stores of barley and grain. They are part of the castle's life and part of its death. For wherever there are rats, there is plague. And though medieval people do not understand bacteria, they know with deep, bone-chilling instinct that when rats appear in greater numbers, sickness follows. Buboes in armpits, fevers that burn until minds shatter, the smell of sweat and death in every hall. They fear the rats as harbingers of death, shadows with tails carrying doom on their backs. And yet tonight, as they scurry above your restless eyes, you can only listen. You cannot chase them away. You cannot block every crack or gnawed hole in the beams. You simply lie in the silence, counting their footsteps as they dance in the rafters. 1, 2, 3. Imagine drifting to sleep to the lullaby of claws scratching wood. Imagine waking with a gnaw mark on your heel. This was castle life, not golden feasts and velvet beds, but nights filled with rats and the silent dread that scurries alongside them. Winter in a medieval castle is unrelenting. The stone walls you thought so strong in summer become a prison of cold. Every breath rises in pale mist. Frost creeps along the inside of narrow windows, forming delicate lace that bites your fingers if you touch it. Blankets are thin. Furs are precious and reserved for the Lord and his family. Servants and guards sleep wrapped in whatever wool cloaks they own, huddled close on straw bedding infested with lice. At dawn, your body aches. The chill seeps into your bones. turning your fingers stiff as you pull on rough, unwashed clothing. You move quickly to avoid punishment for sluggishness, though each step feels like walking through water turned to ice. Food is meager in winter. Salted meat from the autumn slaughter has grown tough and dry. The salted cod flakes apart with a sour smell if not soaked long enough to remove the brine. Grain stores are guarded carefully, with rations measured to the smallest handful. Meals are thin pottages, a watery stew of barley or oats, with bits of turnip, onion or stale bread dropped in for bulk. Sometimes you find weevils floating in the pot. You flick them aside and keep eating. The hunger gnaws at your belly. You dream of spring onions, fresh bread, sweet apples, and roast meats glistening with fat. Dreams that fade each morning as you wake to the taste of cold porridge and bitter ale. But hunger is nothing compared to endless work. If you are a servant girl, your hands crack and bleed from scrubbing flagstones with ash and sand. If you are a boy in the stables, you wake before dawn to carry frozen buckets of water and shovel out steaming piles of manure. If you are a kitchen maid, you stand for hours near the smoky hearth, eyes watering as you turn spits of meat you will never taste. And if you are a guard on the battlements, you pace back and forth along the frosted stone walk, eyes scanning the silent forest beyond, wrapped in a cloak that does little to keep out the wind that cuts across your face like a blade. The castle is grand in summer, when banners flutter and the courtyard fills with music and travellers. But in winter, it is a fortress of silence, hunger, cold, and labour. Each day feels eternal. Each night you dream only of warmth, warmth that will not come until spring returns if you live to see it. By dawn, a pale light filters through the castle's narrow arrow-slit windows, revealing the looming stone walls around you, carved with centuries of soot and scratches. As you rise, your nose wrinkles at the sour, damp smell clinging to the halls. Because now comes the morning's first task, the privy. Castles did not have neat tile bathrooms with perfumed soaps and flushing water. Instead, they had garderobes, small stone chambers jutting out from the castle wall, with a wooden seat carved with a hole that opened straight down to the earth below. Or worse, into a cesspit or moat. Imagine stepping in before the sun has fully risen. Cold wind howls through the narrow slit of an opening, swirling around your legs. You sit shivering, clutching your tunic as the winter chill bites your skin. Beneath you, the darkness seems endless. The air rises, rancid and sour with ammonia. Below, waste piles and pools, feeding armies of flies, beetles and wriggling larvae. In summer, the stench is unbearable, thick enough to taste in the back of your throat. But there was strategy in this filth. Some castle designers built garderobes so that waste fell into the moat, filling it with rotting sewage. An enemy trying to cross the moat would have to wade through knee-deep bacteria-choked sludge before even reaching the walls. Other garderobes were built into towers called privy towers, projecting from the castle walls like secret stone appendages. Here, waste fell straight down the sheer rock face, washing away with rain. But not everything washed away. The stone seats remained coated with dried filth. Cleaning was rare. Servants called gong farmers or nightmen were paid to scoop out cesspits, a job so foul it was considered cursed. Their hands, clothes and hair carried the permanent scent of ammonia and rot. And what of toilet paper? There was none. You would wipe yourself with moss, handfuls of straw, rags if you were lucky. or simply your hand. Imagine stepping out of the privy into the morning's first rays of light, the breeze carrying away the foul stench from your clothes and hair, but never fully cleansing it. This was daily life in castles. No privacy, no soap, no relief from the smells of thousands living, sweating, relieving themselves within the same stone walls. A kingdom might gleam with gold on its crown, but beneath it all lay the silent truth. Every castle rose from foundations of filth. The feast hall flickers with candlelight, shadows dancing on stone walls carved with centuries of soot. Tonight is a banquet. The table groans under trenchers of bread, thick slabs of roasted venison, swans stuffed with herbs, glazed apples, and spiced wine poured into goblets of hammered pewter. But look closer. The bread is dark and coarse, filled with ground rye and barley husks. It scratches your throat as you swallow. Sometimes it carries ergot fungus, a mold that poisons the blood, causing convulsions, hallucinations, and death. People called it St. Anthony's fire, believing it was punishment from God. The meat is dripping with fat, flavored with cloves, cinnamon, and pepper imported at enormous cost. But these spices do more than season. They mask the rank scent of rot. Because food preservation was primitive, even for nobles, meat often sat for days before it reached the kitchen, crawling with early decay. Chefs coated it in strong spices to hide the sour taste. Guests chewed carefully, praying it wouldn't make them sick. And beneath the table, rats feast on scraps. They slip between feet in the rushes, nibbling at bones tossed aside. Their greasy tails flick crumbs into the straw. Sometimes one scurries across a slippered foot, and the lady of the manor shrieks as servants scramble to crush it with iron-tipped boots. Meanwhile, in the kitchens, cooks sweat beside enormous hearths, boiling pottage, a gruel of barley, turnips, garlic, and onion, thin, grey, and clinging to the wooden spoon like sludge. This was peasant fare, watery, flavourless, the same meal every day until death. Even milk was risky. Without refrigeration, it soured quickly. Cheeses crawled with maggots if left uncovered too long. Eggs carried salmonella. Beer was safer to drink than water, but too much left workers drunk and stumbling on the castle stairs. And water, it flowed dark with waste from moat latrines, slimy with algae and rot. Few drank it unless desperation gnawed at their throat. So each mouthful in a medieval castle was an act of faith. Faith that the stew wasn't spoiled. Faith that the bread wouldn't poison your blood. Faith that you wouldn't wake in the night vomiting until dawn. Because to dine in medieval luxury was to dine with death, sitting silently at your side, waiting for a single careless bite. Imagine waking before dawn in your chamber high within the castle walls. Your breath hangs in the air like fog, drifting from chapped lips. The stone walls weep with moisture, cold to the touch, slick with condensation that seeps into your straw mattress, your linen sheets, your very bones. You wrap yourself in woolen blankets woven thick, but still the chill bites through, because castles were never warm. The hearth in your room burns low, the embers sleeping under a crust of ash. Servants will come later to stoke the flames, but for now the stones radiate only the bitter cold of the outside night. There are no glass windows to keep out the damp winter fog. Only wooden shutters creak against their hinges, and through the cracks slips an endless draught that makes candle flames shiver and dance. You pull yourself from bed and step onto rushes scattered over the floor to catch dampness and filth. They do little to protect bare feet from the icy stone beneath. The walls are blackened with soot. Thick tapestries hang heavy, woven with lions and saints, meant to block the chill, but doing little. Cold snakes around them, coiling through your chamber like a silent serpent. Even in summer the damp remains. Moss creeps up the outer walls. Mold blooms in corners where sun never reaches. Your clothes smell faintly of mildew, your bedding, your hair. And at night, darkness reigns. True darkness. Only wavering torches in iron brackets and guttering tallow candles with their sour, smoky scent pierce it. You move slowly down the hallway, oil lamp in hand, shadows lurching across the ceiling like phantoms. One misstep, a fold in the rushes, a stray rat underfoot, and you tumble down the stone stairs. Many did, their broken bodies carried out in silence, a whispered warning to tread carefully in the night. Because in medieval castles, light was a luxury, and warmth was a distant dream. Each dawn brought bitter winds through arrow slits. Each dusk, a chill so deep it gnawed at your marrow, leaving even the wealthiest lord to shiver under mountains of wool and fur, praying for the distant sun to rise again. Picture yourself seated in the great hall for a feast. Above, the timbered roof disappears into shadows. Banners flutter in candlelight, and the smell of roasted meat drifts thick through the air, mingling with wood smoke, sweat, and spilled ale. At first, it seems glorious. Servants hurry between long trestle tables bearing trenchers piled with boiled beef, roasted swan glazed golden, and thick stew spiced with cloves and pepper to hide the sour edge of rot. Because freshness was fleeting in castle kitchens. Without refrigeration, meat often arrived already turning. Fish, even salt-cured, carried the scent of far-off decay. Poultry might lie for days before plucking, the flesh softening under a thin crust of mold and flies. Cooks doused it in vinegar and spices, cinnamon, cloves, mustard seeds, garlic, all masking the rancid undertones. What could not be saved was boiled into stews to soften its decay, the aroma hidden beneath layers of pungent herbs, and you would eat it. Alongside stale rye bread thick with weevils or barley loaves baked dense and sour, the grain sometimes mixed with powdered chalk to stretch supplies. When you bit into your meal, you might feel something crunch, a beetle baked into the crust, or fragments of grit from millstones that ground the flour, each mouthful wearing down your teeth, leaving them jagged, yellow, and painfully cracked. Drink was little comfort. Ale, brewed weak and sour, sloshed from communal jugs, each lip upon it leaving trails of grease and illness. Wine, reserved for nobles, arrived sharp with vinegar and floating flecks of sediment, for filtration was unknown. And water, that ran from the same streams where waste and slaughterhouse refuse flowed, green with algae, brown with mud, alive with parasites invisible to medieval eyes. So you drank your ale, bitter and warm, ate your salted pork, grey and stringy, picked at stale bread and tried not to gag when the fish's rancid fat oozed upon your tongue. And all around you, the great hall roared with laughter, because no one there had tasted any better. This was their feast, a feast of decay, hidden behind spices and ceremony, swallowed down by lords and servants alike beneath flickering torches, as minstrels sang of chivalry and honor in a world where survival was an endless meal of rot and ruin. Imagine waking before dawn in the castle's servants' quarters, your straw pallet scratching your skin as you rise to the bitter cold. Outside, frost clings to the courtyard stones. Inside, the laundry mistress is already barking orders. Medieval laundry was not the fresh, lemon-scented ritual we know today. There were no gentle lavender detergents or quiet washing machines humming in the background. Instead, clothes were soaked in vats of stale, fermented urine. Yes, human urine, collected daily from chamber pots around the castle. They called it lant. Rich in ammonia, it helped lift grease and grime from wool tunics and linen shifts. Laundresses would plunge their bare, chapped hands into these reeking barrels, scrubbing cloth against cloth until their knuckles bled raw. The stench rose like a ghost into the rafters, clinging to hair and breath. But what choice did they have? Soap was rare and precious, reserved only for the finest linens of nobility. Even then, it was made from animal fats and wood ash, leaving its own bitter, acrid scent. Now, close your eyes and imagine wandering the torchlit halls of a medieval castle at midnight. Shadows flicker against tapestries. The rushes beneath your feet rustle softly with every step. But listen closer. Beneath that rustling is a skittering, scratching chorus. Rats. Hundreds of them, hidden in the dark corners, nesting in the straw strewn across stone floors for warmth and softness. They scurried beneath beds where nobles slept unaware, darted under trestle tables in the great hall, and nested in kitchens where scraps of salted meat and crumbs of barley bread fell freely. They chewed through grain stores, gnawed at linen cloths, and left their droppings scattered like black grains of rice. With them came fleas, tiny, biting, blood-hungry. They nestled in the rat's fur by day and by night, crept onto human skin, unseen, unfelt until the itching began. And with fleas came plague. When pestilence swept through castle towns and manors, it moved silently at first. A fever, a chill, a swelling in the groin or underarm, darkening to black beneath the skin. Victims moaned softly in their straw beds, shivering under furs soaked with sweat, until the smell of rotting flesh drifted through the chamber. Within days, entire households fell. Servants died where they worked, left slumped over hearth fires or collapsed while sweeping rushes. Nobles, too, fell victim, their wealth offering no protection from a sickness carried by tiny parasites. The dead were carted away at dawn, covered only in sackcloth. Their bedding was burned, their rooms scrubbed with vinegar in a desperate hope of cleansing the air. But it rarely worked. Some blamed sin, God's punishment for hidden wickedness. Others blamed the foul stench of waste pits and garderobes, believing that sickness rose from rotting filth in the air itself. They scattered bundles of lavender and rosemary along corridors and slept with pouches of herbs tied around their necks to keep death at bay. But no sweet scent could stop the Black Death when it came. Imagine lying in a cold stone chamber, feverish, as rats skitter in the darkness beyond your bed. Imagine listening to the quiet sobs of maids praying not to be next. Imagine knowing that your castle walls, so strong against swords and arrows, were powerless against a bite you never felt. This was the hidden terror of castle life. A world where death traveled unseen, carried by creatures too small to fear, until it was too late. Now, picture yourself in the grand feasting hall of a medieval castle. Long tables groan under trenchers of roast meat, wheels of cheese cracked open to reveal their soft, pungent hearts, and goblets brimming with dark ale and sweet-spiced wine. The scent of roasting goose mingles with wood smoke and the sour tang of bodies unbathed for days. Torches flicker against stone walls hung with tapestries depicting battles, saints, and hunting scenes. Above it all, the lord and lady sit on their raised dais, crowned in gold and ermine. But tonight is not only for feasting. At the lord's command, the jester dances forward, bells jingling on his cap and ankles. His clothes are a patchwork of garish colours. His painted face grins wide as he capers, tumbles and jeers. He tells bawdy jokes to make the noble guests roar with laughter, mocking priests, peasants, or even the guests themselves if it pleases his master. He's called a fool, yet he's no fool. His life depends upon his wit. If he displeases the Lord, his jests might be his last. And jesters were not the only entertainment. Imagine watching a bear chained to an iron stake in the courtyard, growling low as dogs are set upon it for the noble's amusement. The hounds bark and snap at its fur, and the bear roars in pain and terror as nobles cheer, coins exchanging hands in quiet wagers. Or picture a dwarf forced to dance for the guests, clumsy in heavy clothing, or a captured foreigner displayed like an exotic prize, paraded before nobles who laughed at his strange tongue and darker skin. Musicians played lutes and flutes in candlelit corners, their fingers aching from hours of endless songs. Troubadours recited tales of romance and battle, while serving boys ran barefoot across rush-strewn floors, dodging kicks and thrown bones. And when the feast ended, the hall echoed with drunken songs and rough laughter. The jester bowed low, praying his humour had kept his head upon his shoulders another night. To live in a castle was not merely to feast with kings and nobles. It was to witness a world where suffering became spectacle, where cruelty was entertainment, and where behind every painted smile hid a silent plea for mercy. Now, let us slip away from the feasting hall into the hidden world behind it, the castle kitchens. At dawn, long before nobles yawned awake in their feather beds, the kitchen fires were already roaring. Young scullions, boys and girls not yet 12, rose in darkness to haul water from the well, their fingers numb from the icy buckets that splashed and soaked their rough tunics. The kitchens were vast stone chambers filled with noise, heat and smoke. Great iron cauldrons hung over blazing hearths, bubbling with pottage thickened with barley, onions and scraps of salted meat. The smell of singed hair was common. A careless bend over the fire and your locks burned away. Spits creaked as they turned entire carcasses, lamb, deer, pig, rotated day and night by spit boys. These boys, sometimes no older than 8, spent endless hours crouched in small recesses carved into the hearth walls, their only job to turn the iron rod by hand. The fire roasted their cheeks raw and blistered their arms. Some went blind from the constant smoke, others crippled by the cramped stone alcoves that twisted their growing bones. In corners of the kitchen, undercooks chopped vegetables with knives so dull it took strength to slice a turnip, and when they slipped, which they often did, their blood joined the juices on the chopping block. Few paused to bandage a wound. There were too many mouths waiting to be fed. Hierarchy ruled even here. The master cook barked orders, deciding who deserved a stolen morsel of meat or a leftover crust. Servants were beaten for mistakes, burned bread, soured cream, or forgetting the spices reserved for the Lord's trencher. And yet, a kitchen post was a privilege, It meant warmth, scraps of food, and a chance to live another day. Rats scurried beneath stacked sacks of flour and barley, their eyes glittering in the dim firelight. Cats hunted them silently, weaving between barefoot children as ashes floated through the thick air like falling snow. Here in the kitchen, where hunger was constant and burns were common, life was a daily gamble between injury, exhaustion, and dismissal. And when at last the banquet was served, and nobles praised the feast, no thought was given to the blistered palms that turned the spits, or the swollen knees of the girl who scrubbed the pots. The kitchen remained unseen, its people as hidden as the bones thrown to the dogs. Imagine the morning rituals of a noblewoman in her dimly lit solar chamber. Servants surround her, pulling tight the laces of her gown, brushing fragrant oils into her hair to mask the sour smell of an unwashed scalp. Beneath the perfumes, rosewater, lavender, musk, lurks a scalp alive with lice. Combs dipped in vinegar and herbs are scraped through thinning strands, trying to dislodge nests of eggs. But the most toxic ritual of all comes next. The white lead paste, a creamy paint of vinegar and powdered lead, is smeared across her face, neck, and chest to create a pale, luminous glow. Pale skin is fashionable, a symbol of wealth and leisure, proof you do not labor in the fields. But the lead sinks into her pores each day, poisoning her blood. Over time, it brings tremors to her hands, blackens her teeth, and creates sores upon her skin. Yet she applies more to cover the blemishes it caused. Her hair, once alive with natural oils, is hidden beneath wigs powdered with crushed starch and scented with floral perfumes. But these wigs carry their own decay. They rot from within, gathering mildew and the stench of scalp infections trapped below. From a distance, nobles glimmer like marble statues, shimmering with pearls, lace, and sweet perfume. Up close, their beauty is a veil for rotting teeth, weeping skin sores, and hair teeming with unseen life. Imagine biting into a crust of barley bread with a tooth already blackened by rot. The pain shoots up your jaw and burrows into your temple like a worm wriggling behind your eye. Medieval dentistry was not a science. It was agony wrapped in prayers and superstition. Tooth powders made from crushed herbs and ashes scrubbed away some debris, but could not hold decay. Sugar was rare, but bread grit, stone ground flour, and constant beer drinking eroded enamel, exposing soft dentin to infection. When the pain became unbearable, villagers and nobles alike would turn to the barber surgeon, the same man who cut hair and performed battlefield amputations would grip your decaying tooth with iron pliers, twist, and wrench it free. No anesthetic, no sanitation. Only prayers screamed to a wooden crucifix clutched in trembling hands. If infections set in deeper, an abscess swelling your cheek to twice its size, there was no cure. The poison would seep into your bloodstream, bringing fever and death. Some believed rotten teeth were punishment from God for unspoken sins. And so people walked the castle halls with breath rancid from decay, teeth blackened and shattered, gums swollen and bleeding. Each smile revealing a mouthful of pain hidden behind polite words and painted lips. Now, let us descend into the chambers of pain and hope, the world of medieval medicine. In an age before germ theory, healing was guided by humours, superstition, and fragments of ancient texts. Physicians were rare and costly. Remember our barber, surgeon, dentist? He is also the doctor. He pulled teeth and set bones with the same unwashed hands. Imagine lying feverish in a drafty stone chamber, your sweat soaking linen sheets as your family prays beside you. The surgeon arrives with a leather pouch of tools, blades rusted from damp air, forceps, and bowls for bleeding. Your treatment begins with bloodletting. Leeches, harvested from stagnant ponds, are pressed to your skin. The cold, slimy bodies latch on, and soon your blood flows dark and thin into waiting cups. If leeches are scarce, a small blade slices your vein, and your lifeblood streams out, believed to carry away the sickness within. Boiled urine was another cure. Heated until steaming, it was poured over wounds to cleanse them, for it was warm, sterile from heat, and seen as a gift of the body returning to heal itself. Some healers even prescribed it to drink, believing it cleansed the humours from within. Poultices were made from herbs and mouldy bread, mixed with animal fat or dung, then pressed onto sores and infections. The smell alone could turn a strong stomach, but hope was stronger than revulsion. And prayers wove through every treatment. Monks and healers murmured Latin chants as they rubbed oils across inflamed skin, asking saints to intervene where knives could not. There were successes. Broken bones set straight, wounds stitched closed. But so often, illness ended in the castle chapel, with tolling bells and a shrouded body carried down cold stone steps to be buried in earth that knew countless such secrets. For medieval medicine was a desperate dance with death. Leeches, blades, boiled urine, and whispered prayers against a darkness few could name. Close your eyes and let the darkness of these castle walls melt away. Imagine the echo of your footsteps fading down torchlit halls, the stench of chamber pots, rotting teeth, and disease slipping away with each breath. Feel the cool stone floor beneath your feet, the scent of stale rushes, animal dung, and burning tallow candles drifting into the shadows of your mind. Behind you, the lords and ladies sit upon their thrones, hair rotting beneath powdered wigs, lead makeup cracking upon poisoned skin. Beyond them, the kitchen still boiled vats of rancid meat, the dungeons still cradle the desperate and forgotten, and the rats scurry in silent conquest of every hall. Breathe deeper now. The castle gates swing closed. You are safe here, in your warm bed, your chest rising and falling like the soft flicker of candlelight. Whatever darkness waits in ancient stone halls, it cannot follow you into this quiet hour. Here, there is only the hush of sleep descending, a gentle promise that this night will carry you beyond plague carts, barber surgeons, and lice-ridden sheets, into a realm of peaceful dreams. Thank you for joining me tonight on Muse to Sleep. If your eyes are still open, know that I am grateful for your presence here. May tomorrow greet you gently. Good night.